I was sitting in my warm kitchen, watching the snow fall so thick I could barely see my own mailbox, when someone started pounding on my front door like they were trying to break it down. It was 7 in the morning on a Sunday, and the blizzard had started around 3 the previous afternoon. By now, we had at least 16 inches on the ground with no sign of it letting up. The meteorologists were calling it the worst winter storm to hit suburban Chicago in 20 years. I had spent my Saturday evening making sure my snowblower was ready to go, stocking up on firewood, and settling in with a good book and some hot coffee. The pounding continued, more insistent now. I set down my mug and walked to the door, already knowing who it would be. Through the frosted glass, I could see a figure bundled up like they were about to climb Everest, though given the weather outside, it might not have been too far off. I opened the door to find Patricia Henderson, president of the Maple Grove Homeowners Association, standing on my porch with her arms crossed. Snow was swirling around her, and her face was already red from the cold and what I suspected was anger. "Matthew Carson," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" 7 in the morning, I replied. "On a Sunday, during a blizzard. What can I do for you, Patricia?" She thrust a piece of paper at me, the HOA letterhead barely visible under the accumulating snow. According to Section 14, Paragraph 3 of the HOA bylaws, all residents are responsible for maintaining clear sidewalks in front of their property within 6 hours of snowfall cessation, or during ongoing snow events if accumulation exceeds 12 inches. I stared at her, genuinely confused. "Patricia, the snow is still coming down. It has not stopped snowing." "Which is why I am referring to the second clause," she said, speaking slowly as if I were a child. "We have exceeded 12 inches of accumulation. Your sidewalk needs to be cleared immediately." "The snow is still falling," I repeated. "If I clear it now, it will just be covered again in an hour." "That is not my concern. The rules are clear. You need to clear your sidewalk now, or you will receive a fine of $200. I looked past her at the street, where snow was drifting across everything in sight. No one was outside. No one in their right mind would be outside except for Patricia Henderson, who apparently thought HOA bylaws superseded basic common sense and the laws of nature. "Patricia, with all due respect, I will clear my sidewalk when the storm passes. Right now it would be pointless and dangerous." Her eyes narrowed. "That is not acceptable. Furthermore, as you live on the corner lot, you are responsible for both the sidewalk in front of your property and the one along the side street. That is double the area that needs immediate attention." This was news to me. "Show me where it says that." She flipped through the papers she was carrying, snowflakes making the pages stick together. After a moment, she pulled out another sheet. "Section 18, Paragraph 7. Corner lot residents are responsible for all public walkways adjacent to their property lines." I took the paper from her and read it. She was technically correct, though I had a feeling this particular rule had been added recently. Very recently. Possibly after I had voted against her proposal to increase HOA fees last month. "When was this added to the bylaws?" I asked. "That is irrelevant. It is part of the current bylaws, which you agreed to follow when you purchased your home. I will clear the sidewalks when the storm ends, Patricia. That is the safest and most logical course of action." She pulled out her phone and began typing. "You are receiving your first warning. If the sidewalks are not clear within 2 hours, you will be fined. If they are not clear within 4 hours, you will be fined again. The fines will continue to accumulate until you comply. You cannot be serious." "I am deadly serious, Matthew. Rules exist for a reason. If we let one person ignore them, Soon everyone will think they can do whatever they want. This neighborhood has standards." She turned and marched down my porch steps, nearly slipping on the ice that had formed underneath the fresh snow. I watched her get into her luxury SUV, which was running in my driveway, exhaust billowing into the cold air. She backed out and drove away, her taillights quickly disappearing into the white curtain of falling snow. I closed the door and looked at the papers she had given me. The bylaws had indeed been updated, and there in black and white was the requirement for corner lot maintenance. The revision date was from 3 weeks ago, right after the last HOA meeting that I had missed because of a work trip. My phone buzzed. An email from the HOA with the subject line, "Violation notice, immediate action required." I deleted it without reading it. I finished my coffee and watched the snow continue to fall. The weather service had updated their predictions. We were now looking at possibly 24 inches before the storm moved on. It was supposed to continue until late afternoon, maybe early evening. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang. It was my neighbor, Tom Bailey, who lived 2 houses down. "Matt, did Patricia come to your house this morning?" "Yeah, demanding I shovel during the blizzard." "You too," she called me. "Said I need to clear my driveway and sidewalk by noon or face fines. Matt, my snowblower is broken. I was going to wait until the storm passed and then pay a service to come do it. She is saying that is not acceptable." "This is ridiculous. No one should be out in this weather." She said she is going around to every house in the neighborhood. Apparently, she decided that this storm is the perfect opportunity to enforce the snow removal bylaws. I think she is still mad about the fee increase vote. That made sense. Patricia had wanted to raise HOA fees by 30% to fund what she called neighborhood improvements, which mostly seemed to involve decorative elements that nobody wanted. The vote had failed by a significant margin, and Patricia had not taken it well. "Just wait it out," I told Tom. "She cannot fine everyone." "I would not be so sure. You know how she gets." After I hung up, I received 3 more calls from neighbors, all with similar stories. Patricia was indeed making her rounds, either in person or by phone, demanding that everyone clear their properties immediately despite the ongoing blizzard. By noon, the snow was still falling heavily. I had received 5 more emails from the HOA, each one threatening escalating fines. According to the messages, I was now up to $400 in violations. I made myself lunch and watched the weather report. The storm was moving slower than expected. They were now predicting it would not clear out until after midnight, possibly not until early Monday morning. Total accumulation estimates had been revised upward to 30 inches. At 2 in the afternoon, I heard the sound of a snowblower outside. I looked out my window to see my neighbor across the street, Bill Morrison, attempting to clear his driveway. He was making slow progress, and I could see the snow filling in behind him almost as fast as he could clear it. After about 20 minutes, he gave up and went back inside. My phone rang again. This time it was Patricia. "Matthew, I drove by your house. Your sidewalks are still not clear. You are now in violation and have accumulated $800 in fines. Patricia, the storm is still active. I am not going out in this. Then you will continue to accumulate fines. I have a responsibility to this community to ensure everyone follows the rules. You are not special. You do not get to pick and choose which bylaws you follow. No one is out in this weather except you, apparently. This is not reasonable. The bylaws do not have a reasonability clause. They are clear and specific. Clear your sidewalks or pay the fines. Those are your options." She hung up before I could respond. I sat back down and tried to focus on my book, but I kept thinking about Patricia driving around the neighborhood in this weather, checking to see who had and had not complied with her demands. The woman was obsessed. By evening, the snow was still falling, though it had slowed slightly. I checked the weather radar and saw that the storm was finally starting to move on. We had about 4 more hours of snow, then it would taper off overnight. I received another email from Patricia. The fine was now up to $1,200. She had also sent a mass email to the entire neighborhood, listing everyone who was currently in violation. My name was at the top of the list, along with 18 other households. My phone started ringing with calls from other neighbors. Everyone was furious. Patricia had been relentless throughout the day, driving around in her SUV, taking pictures of unshoveled sidewalks and driveways, sending threatening emails and making phone calls. Several people had actually gone out and tried to clear their properties, only to find it was futile with the ongoing snowfall. "We should file a complaint," Tom said when he called. "This is harassment." Agreed, but that will take time. Right now, she is technically within her authority as HOA president. The bylaws do say what she claims they say. Those bylaws are insane. Who clears snow during an active blizzard? Apparently, Patricia thinks we should. After dark, the snow finally began to taper off. By 10 o'clock, it was down to light flurries. By midnight, it had stopped completely. The final total was just over 28 inches, with drifts in some places reaching 4 feet or higher. I looked outside at my sidewalks. They were completely buried, indistinguishable from the rest of the landscape. The street had not been plowed yet. The city was still working on main roads and would not get to residential areas until morning at the earliest. I decided to get some sleep and deal with it in the morning. I was exhausted from the stress of Patricia's constant harassment, and I was not about to go out at midnight to shovel snow in sub-zero temperatures. My phone buzzed one more time before I went to bed. Another email from Patricia. The fine was now up to $1,600, and she was threatening to place a lien on my property if I did not comply within 24 hours. I woke up Monday morning to bright sunshine and a landscape that looked like something from a postcard. Everything was covered in pristine white snow, sparkling in the morning light. It was beautiful and absolutely still. I checked my phone. 3 more emails from Patricia. The fine was now at $2,200. She had also sent another mass email announcing an emergency HOA meeting for Wednesday evening to discuss chronic violation of community standards. I ate breakfast and then bundled up to go outside. The temperature had dropped overnight, and it was now sitting at about 5 degrees Fahrenheit with a wind chill well below zero. Perfect weather for manual labor. I started up my snowblower and began working on my driveway. It was slow going. The snow was heavy and deep, and I had to make multiple passes to clear even a small section. After an hour, I had managed to clear about half of my driveway. That was when Patricia showed up. She pulled up in her SUV, parked on the street, and got out. She was dressed like she was going to a business meeting, completely inappropriate for the weather. "It is about time," she called out over the sound of my snowblower. "You are still in violation for the sidewalks." I shut off the machine. "I am getting to them. You should have done them first." The sidewalks are public walkways. Your personal driveway is secondary. I need to be able to get my snowblower out of my garage, Patricia. That requires clearing some of the driveway first. That sounds like poor planning on your part. I expect the sidewalks to be completely clear within 2 hours, or the fines will continue. She got back in her SUV and drove off, leaving me standing in the cold. I finished my driveway and then moved to the sidewalks. The front sidewalk was not too bad, but the side street sidewalk was a nightmare. Snow had drifted heavily there, and in some spots it was nearly 5 feet deep. I worked for another 3 hours, my hands freezing despite my gloves, my face numb from the cold. By early afternoon, I had finally finished. My entire body ached, and I was pretty sure I had mild frostbite on my cheeks. I went inside and thawed out, making hot chocolate and sitting by the fireplace. My phone rang. It was Patricia. "I drove by your property. The sidewalks are clear, but you piled snow in the street. That is a violation of City Code and HOA Bylaws Section 22. Where else am I supposed to put it? There is nowhere else for it to go. That is your problem to solve. Remove the snow from the street or face additional fines. You have until tomorrow morning." She hung up. I went to my window and looked out. Yes, there was snow in the street because that is what happens when you shovel sidewalks. You have to put the snow somewhere. Every house on the block had snow piled in the street from their clearing efforts. I called Tom. "Is Patricia fining everyone for snow in the street? Just you, as far as I know." "Matt, I think she has it out for you specifically." "Because I voted against her fee increase." "Probably. She is vindictive like that. Remember when the Johnsons painted their shutters without HOA approval? She made their lives hell for 6 months." I remembered. The Johnsons had eventually sold their house and moved away, citing the toxic HOA environment. I spent the rest of Monday moving snow from the street to my yard, a backbreaking task that took until after dark. I had to haul it in a sled because there was nowhere nearby to put it. Tuesday morning, I received another email. Patricia had driven by and determined that there was still too much snow in the street near my property. More fines. That was when I decided enough was enough. I had a friend named Rick who ran a landscaping company. In winter, he operated several commercial snow removal trucks with plow attachments. I gave him a call. "Rick, how would you like to make some easy money, always? What do you need?" "I need to rent one of your plow trucks for tomorrow night, and I need you to show me how to operate it." "What are you planning, Matt?" "Let us just say I am going to comply with some HOA demands in a very specific way." Rick laughed. "I have heard about your HOA president. Everyone in town has. She is notorious. Sure, I will help you out. This sounds entertaining." We arranged for me to pick up the truck on Wednesday afternoon. Rick spent an hour showing me how to operate the plow, how to angle it, how to control the height and speed. It was not too complicated, especially for what I had in mind. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for 7 o'clock Wednesday evening at Patricia's house. She lived in the nicest house in the neighborhood, a large colonial with professional landscaping and a circular driveway. She liked to host HOA meetings there to remind everyone of her status. The weather forecast for Wednesday was perfect for my plan. Another storm system was moving in, expected to drop another 8 to 10 inches starting late afternoon and continuing through the night. I attended the HOA meeting, mostly to keep up appearances. About 20 people were there, which was a good turnout for our neighborhood of 45 homes. Most people usually skipped these meetings because they were boring and Patricia dominated every discussion. She started the meeting by projecting a screen showing all the violations from the previous weekend storm. My name was highlighted at the top. "This is unacceptable," Patricia said, her voice echoing in her large living room. "We have clear rules about snow removal, and yet nearly half of this neighborhood chose to ignore them. This shows a complete lack of respect for our community standards." "Maybe the rules are unreasonable," someone called out. It was Sarah Chen, who lived on the next block over. "You are demanding we shovel during an active blizzard. That is dangerous and pointless." "The bylaws are clear," Patricia responded. "If you think they are unreasonable, you can propose changes at the next quarterly meeting. Until then, they remain in effect and must be followed. You specifically targeted certain people, Tom said, standing up. Lots of houses did not clear their sidewalks until Monday, but you only find a few of us. That is selective enforcement. I find those who were most egregiously in violation. Matthew Carson, for example, waited until Monday afternoon to even begin clearing his property, and then he piled snow illegally in the street. Everyone turned to look at me. I kept my expression neutral. I cleared my property as soon as it was safe to do so, I said calmly. And I put the snow where everyone else put theirs, in the only place available. You had ample time during the storm, Patricia insisted. You chose not to comply. Because I am not an idiot, I replied. No one should be shoveling during a blizzard. Several people nodded in agreement. Patricia's face was turning red. If you do not pay your fines by Friday, I will begin lien proceedings against your property. That goes for everyone else in violation as well. This meeting is adjourned. She ushered everyone out quickly after that, clearly not wanting to deal with more pushback. I walked out with Tom and Sarah. She is out of control, Sarah said. We need to remove her as president. That requires a vote, Tom said, which means we need to get more people involved. Most of the neighborhood does not even come to meetings. Start a phone tree, I suggested. Get everyone organized. In the meantime, I have a plan for tonight. What kind of plan? Sarah asked. Better if you do not know. Plausible deniability and all that. Just trust me. They looked at each other skeptically but did not push further. I went home and waited. The new storm had started around 5 o'clock, and by 8, we already had 3 inches of fresh snow with more coming down steadily. This storm was not as intense as the previous one, but it was enough for my purposes. At 10 o'clock, when most of the neighborhood was probably getting ready for bed, I got in Rick's plow truck and started it up. The diesel engine rumbled to life, and I felt a surge of satisfaction. This was going to be good. I started with the main street of our development, plowing it clear from one end to the other. The truck made quick work of it, the heavy blade pushing snow aside like it was nothing. A few porch lights came on as I passed houses, people probably wondering who was plowing so late at night. Then I turned onto Patricia's street. Her house was on a corner lot, just like mine. Her circular driveway was pristine, already cleared from earlier. The walkway to her front door was immaculate. She had probably paid a service to come do it. I angled the plow and began pushing snow up her driveway. I made multiple passes, each time adding more snow, piling it higher and higher. The blade pushed the heavy, wet snow into massive walls. I plowed snow directly against her front door, creating a drift that had to be at least 6 feet high. Then I moved to her side door, the one that led to her garage. More snow packed tight against the door. Then the back door. Same treatment. For good measure, I plowed snow all around her garage doors, making sure the drifts were tall and dense enough that they would be extremely difficult to remove without heavy equipment. The whole process took about 20 minutes. When I was done, Patricia's house was effectively sealed shut by snow. Every door was blocked by massive drifts. Her windows on the ground floor were partially covered. It looked like a snow fort had been built around her entire house. But I was not done. I drove to the houses of the 4 other HOA board members who had supported Patricia's aggressive fine campaign. Deborah Williams, the vice president, Gary Mitchell, the treasurer, Linda Foster, the secretary, and Karen Thompson, the compliance officer who had helped Patricia document all the violations. Each of them received the same treatment. Snow piled against every door, creating impassable barriers. I worked quickly and efficiently, the plow truck making what would have been hours of manual labor into simple work. The storm was still going strong, but I had plowed the main street, which meant technically I had helped with snow removal. All the side streets were still buried, but the main thoroughfare was clear. I was being a good neighbor. I returned the truck to Rick's lot around midnight, thanked him profusely, and drove my own car home. The snow was still falling as I pulled into my driveway, and I felt satisfied in a way I had not felt in months. Thursday morning, I woke up to my phone ringing continuously. I ignored it and made coffee instead, looking out my window at the fresh snow. We had gotten about 9 inches overnight and it was tapering off now. Finally, I checked my phone. 15 missed calls from Patricia, 8 from other HOA board members, and dozens of text messages. Patricia's voicemails were increasingly frantic. "Matthew, I know it was you. I know you are responsible for this. You have committed property damage and vandalism. I am calling the police. You are going to pay for this." I smiled and deleted them. Around 9 o'clock, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find 2 police officers standing on my porch, looking cold and annoyed. "Matthew Carson," the first officer asked. "That is me. We have had a complaint from a Patricia Henderson. She claims you vandalized her property with snow. Do you know anything about that?" I was out late last night helping clear the main street with a friend's plow truck. I wanted to make sure people could get in and out of the neighborhood safely. "Is that a crime?" The officers looked at each other. The second one spoke up. "Mrs. Henderson claims you deliberately plowed snow against her doors, trapping her in her house." "Well, the snow has to go somewhere," I said reasonably. "When you plow a street, the snow ends up on the sides. Sometimes it piles up against driveways and walkways. That is just how snow removal works." She seems to think it was intentional. "Officer, I was out there for over an hour in the middle of a snowstorm, clearing streets so people could drive safely. If some snow ended up in inconvenient places, that is unfortunate, but it is a side effect of snow removal. I am sure you have dealt with similar situations before." The first officer nodded slowly. "We get complaints every winter about plow drivers blocking driveways and walkways. It is not illegal. It is just an unfortunate consequence of clearing snow." "Exactly," I said. "I was trying to help the neighborhood. I am sorry if Mrs. Henderson was inconvenienced, but I did not do anything wrong." The officers took down some notes, asked a few more questions about what time I was out and what streets I had plowed, and then left. They did not seem particularly interested in pursuing the matter further. About an hour later, Patricia called me directly. I almost did not answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "You think you are clever," she hissed, "but I know what you did. You deliberately targeted me and the board members." "I plowed the main street," I said calmly. "The snow had to go somewhere. You blocked every single door to my house. I had to climb out a window to get out. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" "Sounds like a side effect of living on a plowed street. Maybe you should file a complaint with whoever was doing the plowing." "Oh wait, that would be me, the person trying to help the neighborhood clear snow. You know, following those bylaws you are so fond of. This is not over. I am taking this to the board. We are going to expel you from the HOA." "You cannot expel someone from an HOA. I own my property. The HOA is a condition of ownership, not a club you can kick people out of." She sputtered for a moment, clearly not having thought that through. "Then we will fine you. We will fine you so much you will have no choice but to sell and leave." "For what? Clearing snow from the street, being a helpful neighbor. Good luck with that." I hung up before she could respond. The neighborhood grapevine was working overtime. By afternoon, everyone knew what had happened. The reactions were mixed. Some people thought I had gone too far. Others thought it was hilarious and exactly what Patricia deserved. Most people fell somewhere in the middle, acknowledging that what I had done was petty but understandable given Patricia's behavior. Tom called me laughing. "Matt, you actually did it. You actually sealed her in her house with snow. That is legendary." "I was just clearing the street," I said innocently. "Sure you were. And I am sure it was purely coincidental that the 5 people who got the worst of it were Patricia and her supporters on the board." "Snow has to go somewhere. You are my hero, man, seriously. Someone needed to stand up to her." Sarah called me later with a more serious tone. "Matt, I appreciate the sentiment, but this might make things worse. Patricia is vindictive. She's going to come after you hard now." She was already coming after me. At least this way I got some satisfaction out of it. Just be careful. I would not put it past her to try something drastic. Sarah was right to be concerned. Over the next few days, Patricia launched a campaign against me that was impressive in its petness and scope. First, she sent a formal complaint to the HOA board requesting an emergency vote to assess special fines against me for destruction of property and threatening behavior. The vote was held without notifying me, which was against the bylaws, but Patricia did not seem to care. It passed 3-2, with only Tom and Sarah voting against it. Then she filed a formal police report, claiming I had vandalized her property. The police investigated, but since plowing snow onto someone's property is not actually illegal, they closed the case without filing charges. She sent letters to all my neighbors, warning them that I was a dangerous individual who was undermining community safety and standards. Several of my neighbors showed me these letters, and most of them thought Patricia was losing her mind. She tried to get my homeowner's insurance to drop me, claiming I was a liability risk. My insurance company laughed at her and told her to stop calling. She even tried to get the city to revoke my occupancy permit, claiming my house was not up to code. A city inspector came out, looked around, found nothing wrong, and told me off the record that Patricia Henderson was well known to the city offices as a serial complainer, and that they did not take her seriously anymore. Through all of this, I kept meticulous records. Every email, every letter, every phone call. I documented everything Patricia did, including dates, times, and witnesses when possible. 2 weeks after the plowing incident, I received a certified letter from a lawyer representing the HOA. It informed me that I was being assessed $20,000 in fines for various violations, including the original snow removal issues plus new violations for disturbing the peace, damage to common areas, and conduct unbecoming of a community member. The letter demanded payment within 30 days, or the HOA would place a lien on my property and begin foreclosure proceedings. That was when I decided it was time to bring in my own lawyer. I contacted James Morrison, a real estate attorney who specialized in HOA disputes. He had a reputation for being tough and thorough. I met with him at his office in downtown Chicago and showed him everything I had documented. He reviewed the materials for about an hour, occasionally making notes or asking questions. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and smiled. "Mr. Carson, you have an excellent case. In fact, you have several excellent cases. This HOA has violated so many laws and bylaws that I honestly do not know where to start." "What do you mean?" "First, the fines they are trying to assess are illegal. Illinois law limits HOA fines to specific amounts for specific violations, and they have far exceeded those limits. Second, they held votes without proper notice, which violates both their own bylaws and state law. Third, the harassment you have documented constitutes what we call selective enforcement, which is illegal discrimination. And fourth, Threatening foreclosure over disputed fines is considered coercive and potentially fraudulent. So what do? We file suit against the HOA and Patricia Henderson, personally for harassment, abuse of authority, and violation of Illinois HOA statutes. We also file a countersuit to void all the fines they have assessed. And we request an injunction preventing them from taking any further action against you while the case is pending. How long will this take? Several months, probably, but I am confident we will win. The question is how much we go after them for. We could seek damages for emotional distress, legal fees, and punitive damages. I just want them to leave me alone. That we can definitely accomplish. But I would recommend we also seek to have Patricia Henderson removed as HOA president. Her behavior has been egregious, and if we do not stop her, she will just target someone else. I agreed, and James filed the paperwork the following week. The lawsuit hit the HOA like a bomb. Patricia immediately called an emergency meeting, which I attended with James by my side. "This is outrageous," Patricia said, waving the legal papers around. "Matthew is trying to destroy this HOA because he does not want to follow simple rules." "Mrs. Henderson," James said calmly, "my client has broken no rules. Your organization, however, has broken numerous laws. I suggest you retain legal counsel immediately. We have done nothing wrong. Matthew is the one who vandalized property and refuses to pay legitimate fines. The fines are not legitimate. They exceed statutory limits and were assessed without proper procedure. Additionally, your pattern of harassment against my client constitutes illegal discrimination and selective enforcement. Would you like me to go on?" Patricia's face was turning red. "This is my neighborhood. I have worked for years to maintain standards and keep property values high. I will not let one disgruntled resident ruin everything I have built. You do not own this neighborhood, Mrs. Henderson. You are an elected official of a homeowners association, which means you are bound by both your organization's bylaws and state law. You have violated both extensively." The room was silent. The other board members looked uncomfortable. Finally, Gary Mitchell spoke up. "Patricia, maybe we should get a lawyer to review this." "We do not need a lawyer. This is frivolous." "With respect," James said, "this is far from frivolous. I have documented over 30 separate legal violations. If this goes to trial, and I assure you it will unless we reach a settlement, your organization will lose. The only question is how much it will cost you." Over the next several weeks, the neighborhood divided into camps. Some people supported Patricia, believing she was trying to maintain order and that I was being unreasonable. Others supported me, feeling that Patricia had overstepped her authority and turned the HOA into a personal fiefdom. Tom and Sarah organized a petition to remove Patricia as president and call for new elections. They got signatures from over 60% of the homeowners, which was remarkable given how apathetic most people usually were about HOA politics. Patricia fought back by claiming the petition was invalid due to technical procedural issues. She refused to schedule new elections and threatened to fine anyone who spread false information about the HOA leadership. This led to more people joining the lawsuit. Eventually, 7 other homeowners became co-plaintiffs, each with their own stories of harassment and abuse by Patricia and the board. The case expanded beyond just my snow plowing incident. We uncovered evidence that Patricia had been selectively enforcing rules for years, targeting people she did not like while ignoring violations by her friends. She had assessed illegal fines totaling over $100,000 against various homeowners over the past 3 years. Some people had paid these fines to avoid harassment, not realizing they were illegal. The discovery process revealed even more disturbing information. Patricia had been using HOA funds for personal expenses, including paying for her own lawn care service and home repairs. She had written checks to herself for consulting fees that were never authorized by the board. In total, she had embezzled nearly $30,000 from the HOA over 2 years. When James brought this evidence to the state's attorney office, they opened a criminal investigation. By spring, the snow had long since melted and the legal case was heating up. Patricia had hired her own lawyer who tried to get the case dismissed, but the judge denied the motion. A trial date was set for June. In May, the state's attorney filed criminal charges against Patricia for embezzlement and fraud. She was arrested at her home on a Wednesday morning, and the story made the local news. The headline read, "HOA president charged with embezzling thousands from neighborhood association." The neighborhood erupted. Even Patricia's most loyal supporters could not defend her against criminal charges. The remaining board members held an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to remove her as president and revoke her board membership. New elections were scheduled, and Sarah Chen was elected as the new president on a platform of transparency and reasonable enforcement. One of her first acts was to settle the lawsuit. The HOA agreed to void all fines against me and the other plaintiffs, pay our legal fees, and implement new oversight procedures to prevent future abuse. Patricia's criminal trial took place in August. I attended and watched as the prosecution laid out the evidence of her embezzlement. Her defense attorney tried to argue that the expenses were legitimate HOA business costs, but the receipts told a different story. Personal grocery bills, spa treatments, and even a vacation to Florida had all been paid for with HOA funds. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before finding her guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison and ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA. I felt a mix of emotions watching her sentencing. Part of me felt vindicated. She had made my life miserable for months, and she had abused her position to harass and steal from the people she was supposed to serve. But part of me also felt sad. This woman had been so obsessed with control and power that she had destroyed her own life and reputation. After the trial, I ran into Karen Thompson, the former compliance officer who had helped Patricia document all my supposed violations. She looked exhausted and defeated. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "I did not know she was stealing from us. I thought we were just enforcing the rules." "You were enforcing them selectively," I pointed out. "You targeted specific people while ignoring others." "I know. Patricia convinced me that we needed to be strict, that the neighborhood would fall apart if we did not maintain standards. I realize now that she just wanted control. She used the bylaws as a weapon." "Why did you go along with it?" Karen looked down. "I liked feeling important. I liked being on the board, having people pay attention to me. I got caught up in the power just like she did. I am not proud of it." I appreciated her honesty, even if it did not excuse her behavior. "What are you going to do now?" I resigned from the board. "Sarah asked me to stay on, but I think it is better if I step away. I need to figure out who I am when I am not trying to control everyone around me." Life in the neighborhood slowly returned to normal. Sarah and the new board implemented reasonable policies and procedures. They revised the bylaws to remove many of the petty and unenforceable rules that Patricia had added. They established actual oversight for HOA finances, with quarterly reports and independent audits. The atmosphere changed dramatically. People were friendlier, more relaxed. Block parties started happening again. Kids played in the streets without worried parents hovering nearby afraid of HOA complaints. It felt like a community again, instead of a police state. I never received another HOA violation notice. When winter came around again, I cleared my sidewalks after the snow stopped falling, just like everyone else. No one harassed me about it. No one threatened fines. It was such a simple thing, but it felt revolutionary after the previous year. Tom and I became good friends. We started a tradition of having coffee together every Saturday morning, discussing neighborhood issues and making sure the new board stayed accountable. Sarah would sometimes join us, and we would talk about how to keep the HOA focused on actual community building rather than petty enforcement. One Saturday in December, almost exactly a year after the plowing incident, Tom asked me if I regretted what I had done. "You mean the lawsuit or the plowing?" I asked. "Both, I guess. It turned into such a big thing. Your life was probably hell for months." I thought about it. "No, I do not regret it. Someone needed to stand up to her. If I had not, she would have kept abusing her power, and who knows how many more people she would have hurt. The neighborhood is better off now." "What about the plowing specifically? That was pretty extreme," I laughed. "That I might regret a little. It was petty and childish, but it also felt really good at the time, and it did get everyone's attention. Sometimes you have to do something dramatic to make people wake up and see what is really going on." "Well, it is certainly a story you will be telling for years." He was right about that. The story of how I plowed snow against the HOA president's doors became legendary in our neighborhood and beyond. Friends would ask me to tell it at parties. Neighbors would bring it up whenever HOA issues came up. It became a cautionary tale about the dangers of petty bureaucracy and unchecked authority. But for me, the real story was not about revenge or getting even. It was about standing up for myself and my neighbors when someone with power was abusing it. It was about recognizing when rules stop serving their intended purpose and become tools of oppression. And it was about the importance of community accountability and oversight. Patricia got out of prison after serving 11 months. I heard she moved to another state to live with her sister. I never saw her again, and I was fine with that. I did not need closure or an apology. I just needed her to be out of my life and unable to hurt anyone else. The HOA still exists, of course. It has to, because our neighborhood requires one for certain legal and maintenance issues. But it is a fundamentally different organization now. It serves the homeowners instead of controlling them. It facilitates community instead of policing it. And it operates with transparency and accountability instead of secrecy and arbitrary authority. Every so often, when we get a big snowstorm, someone will joke about whether I am going to plow anyone's doors shut. I always smile and say those days are behind me. And they are. I do not need to resort to petty revenge anymore because the system actually works now. The HOA is what it should have been all along. A tool for neighbors to work together, not a weapon for one person to wield against everyone else. But I will admit, sometimes when I am out clearing my sidewalks on a cold winter morning, I think about that night I drove the plow truck through the neighborhood, sealing Patricia's doors shut with massive walls of snow. I think about the satisfaction I felt, the sense of justice served. And I smile to myself, knowing that sometimes, just sometimes, a little bit of petty revenge is exactly what the situation calls for. The key is knowing when to use it and when to put it away. I used it once. It accomplished what I needed it to. And then I moved on to more constructive methods of solving problems. That is the difference between being petty and being strategic. In the end, my sidewalk snow plowing incident became a catalyst for real change in our neighborhood. It exposed corruption, ended abuse, and created a better community for everyone. Not bad for a few hours of work with a plow truck on a snowy winter night. And every time I see a snowplow working on our streets now, pushing snow aside to clear the way for traffic, I am reminded that sometimes you have to push back against obstacles, even if it creates some temporary mess. The important thing is what you build afterward, once the snow melts and spring arrives. We built something better, something stronger, something more just. That is a legacy I can be proud of, even if it started with me being petty enough to seal my HOA president's doors shut with snow. Sometimes the end really does justify the means, especially when the end is justice, and the means is just frozen water strategically relocated.